Well, it's been a while since we've done a chips video, and so that's what we're doing today. On the last video that I did on chips, we looked at an episode called Karate, and I mentioned in that video that it's the first of 2 episodes that Danny Bonaducci is on, but I was wrong. He's actually in 4 episodes, 2 as the same character, Billy, and then 2 other episodes where he plays 2 completely different characters. Now, in the episode that we're looking at today, Danny Bonaducci reprises his role as Billy. This is the follow-up to Karate. Today we're looking at Chips, Season 5, Episode 22, A Threat of War, aka Karate Part 2. Let's go see what we can find. The episode begins with Ponch and John cruising down Union Avenue, passing by all of these houses and these buildings, and then when they get to Venice Boulevard, they come to a stop. And that shot was actually taken from this very same driveway that I'm standing in right now. You can see this wooden fence and this utility pole. So roughly right about here is where Ponch and John were sitting on their motorcycles. Behind them you can see all of these houses and that apartment building and some of the buildings from downtown Los Angeles off in the distance. That little hamburger stand that you see behind them, that unfortunately is no longer here. But as they're sitting here talking, Ponch looks over in this direction, and he's looking at a building that's supposedly on this corner, and he's talking about the mural that's on it and the artist that painted that mural. And you can see there's not actually a building on this corner, and that's because that building never actually was here. The mural that he was looking at used to be on the side of this building, located at 2334 East Cesar Chavez Avenue in Boyle Heights. But the mural that you see in the show was painted over in the early 80s. Now, this building can also be seen in the movie Colors and Stand and Deliver, and probably some other movies as well. All right, back to the other location. Now, as they're sitting here talking about that mural, suddenly right in front of them, a car comes screeching around the corner, coming off of Union, turning onto Venice. You can see that that building on the corner is no longer there. But once the car gets onto Venice, it passes by all of these buildings, most of which still look the same. Ponch and John then turn onto Venice, and the chase is on. So the car ends up leading them down this path, which runs right along the Spring Street Bridge. They then go underneath the bridge, and unfortunately we can no longer do that. It's now gated off due to drug use and other activity underneath the bridge. But this is where they run into Billy and his karate gang. They would have been standing right over here in this area, watching Billy play with his nunchucks, when he stops and asks, "Remember me?" And they definitely do. John instantly starts having a flashback. The strange thing though, the flashback that he's having is of a fight between Bear and Billy. John wasn't there, so I don't know what he's remembering, but I too have a similar memory. So they try and place Billy under arrest just as the rival gang shows up. But wait, there's more. All of a sudden out of nowhere, Andy Macedon shows up. And then Ponch starts having flashbacks. He remembers that time that he dressed up like Billy Jack, minus the silly hat, and he gets his butt kicked by Andy Mastodon in the back of a taco stand. They realize things are about to get out of hand and they call for backup, and we see Bonnie racing over the Spring Street Bridge. After a little bit of back and forth, they're able to take Billy into custody without an incident. So after getting him out of jail, Andy brings Billy to his old hangout, the Hofbräu restaurant. And as I showed in my last video, that used to be located right here where this section of the LA Convention Center now sits. Ponch goes to pay a visit to his old childhood friend Rosa, who just happens to be the sister of Carlos, the artist who painted those murals, and the leader of Ponch's old gang. At 1920 Mozart Street in Los Angeles, this was the home of Rosa and Carlos. Ponch and John head down to the old Oak Street Youth Center to pay a visit to Billy. And after they're done talking to Billy, we see a couple of young punks outside throwing stuff at the front doors of the youth center. Now, if you pay attention, this is where you'll see that the youth center is now in a completely different location. Because as the two kids run away, we see them running right towards the Spring Street Bridge. Right over there is the same spot where Billy was practicing nunchucks in the beginning of the episode. So the youth center is no longer on Oak Street, but now on Spring Street, just past the Spring Street Bridge. Just about half a block away from Carlos's house, this is the corner of Mozart and Avenue 20, and this is where the finale of this episode takes place. More about that in a little bit, but this is also where Carlos is painting a mural when Andy Masterdome shows up in his Mercedes. Uh-oh. So Andy gives some money to Carlos and tells him that he's going to sponsor him to paint some murals. The only catch is he has to lay off of Billy for a while. Right about that time, Ponch and John come walking around the corner and see Andy handing Carlos money, and they don't like the looks of this one bit. Carlos assures Ponch that Andy was just hiring him to paint some murals and nothing shady is going on. We now find ourselves back at the Oak Street Youth Center where there's going to be a kung fu match.
Karate.
That's what I said, karate match between Ponch and Andy Maskpaban. Now by the end of the fight, Ponch realizes that Andy has turned over a new leaf and he wants to have a truce and help stop the fighting between the gangs. Everybody loves this. Well, not everybody. After the fight, we see those same two little punks smashing out the windows on Billy's car. Billy's car would have been parked right over here. This building was not here at the time. Everybody's walking out of the youth center when they hear the commotion. Billy starts to take off to go beat the crap out of the two little kids when Gertrude and Grossman stop him, and Bear and Bonnie take off to grab the two little kids. Billy, of course, is furious, and this is only going to escalate things. Oh no! Ponch and John are at the Hofbräu restaurant with their two dates and Andy MasterCard. As they're walking out of the restaurant, Andy's getting into his car when a van driven by Billy tries to run him over. Ponch and John take off, and the chase is on. So Ponch takes Rosa home to find that her house has been broken into and vandalized. Of course, Carlos doesn't take this too well, and things only get worse. Oh no! The next day, Carlos is working on the mural when Andy shows up, fresh out of the hospital. A few moments later, Billy shows up with his karate gang. So it was roughly right about here where we see the scariest gang of all time. Luckily, just in the nick of time, Ponch and John show up. They try and get things under control, but then Billy kickstarts the whole thing. You get it? Kickstart? All right. And then it was roughly right about here where Ponch does the weakest kick in the history of the world. I gotta say, it's pretty cool to stand here and think that this is where that big karate fight went down. A lot of stuff here still matches up. And I gotta give a shout out to one of my viewers. I believe his name was Ernesto. He just told me his name a few minutes ago and I'm already unsure. That's how bad my memory is. But I was out here filming. He drove by, he recognized me, he pulled over to say hello. And then what's really cool is he said, "Hey, I know what you're doing. You're filming CHiPs. This is where the karate fight happened with Danny Bonaducci." And I thought that was so cool that not only did he recognize me, but he knew what took place here at this corner. So shout out to Ernesto. Thank you and your wife so much for watching my channel. So the final scene in this episode takes place right here in front of this building. We see Carlos standing on a scaffolding, painting a mural, when suddenly a bunch of cars pull up and park right about here. And Carlos is kind of confused. He's not sure what's going on. And it turns out that the California Highway Patrol is gonna donate a bunch of trees that they're gonna plant right here to help block Carlos's mural. And not only that, but they got a bunch of members of rival gangs to help plant those trees. Makes sense. Now this is the same building that we see in that episode. You can actually see this section of the building and these vents up here. And basically right where this tree is, this is where Carlos's mural would have been. So I guess they were successful in blocking out his mural. Not really sure what happened to the rest of the trees that they were gonna plant right here. Now when Ponch and John come pulling up, I believe they're coming from over here in this direction, and behind them you can see some businesses and a motel, and all of that is gone. Also, when they're standing here and talking and the camera's pointing in the opposite direction, across the street, you can see some houses. All of those houses are gone now as well. This is all now the parking lot for Home Depot. So basically the only two things here that are still the same are this building and then the entrance to the freeway. So that's gonna bring an end to the karate episodes of CHiPs and an end to this video. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Yeah!